Game over.
Thank you for checking out this video. This one's going to be another little look at my Army Armament high capper, specifically the Staccato XL. We're going to look at the pros and cons of it, what I make of it so far. But first, a little bit about how we kind of got there. Time Crisis, one of my favourite video games growing up, to the point of where I just got obsessed with the gun controller that you'd see in the arcades. Now this one's a PlayStation controller, replicates the arcade one really well. It has the blowback and it has a pedal that you plug into it to do your reloads and stuff, just like at the arcade. So I was just kind of like obsessed with this, and I've always tried to figure out what it actually is. According to like IMFDB, I think, and the cover of Time Crisis 2 shows you quite clearly that it's supposed to be a HK Mark 23 SOCOM with a flashlight and stuff, and that's kind of like how it is animated in the game to look. One of them looks kind of like USP-ish with a dual tone, and again with like the torch that in the game you actually use to launch grenades and stuff. So yeah, it's supposed to be a Mark 23, and that kind of makes sense because Japan video games, they seem to love the Mark 23. You've got it in Metal Gear Solid, and it's quite an iconic sort of good guy gun to have, being sort of a Navy SEALs like commissioned thing. So that makes sense, but it's not really what the controller looks like. The controller's got a lot of different sort of features and characteristics that pin it to several different things. So the size wise, it's quite comparable to a Desert Eagle. Can you see there? But it doesn't really look like a Desert Eagle. With its sort of ejection port style, it's quite big. It's sort of reminiscent of Beretta. Beretta doesn't feel as big. I've sort of more closely pinned it down to being a 226 X5, which is obviously the bigger, more competition style version of the SIG 226. It's kind of longer, and with the torch underneath, some of the lines, especially of the trigger curve here, kind of, and the angle of the grip, that's a more accurate representation, I think, of the Time Crisis controller, and it's actually why I got this in the end. But thinking about it and thinking about the premise of Time Crisis, and that it's, you know, an agent or whatever saving the world from a terrorist, more likely to be using something along the lines of a Staccato, like a high-end, well-built 2011 sort of modern 9mm 1911 that is used by some law enforcement groups in America. I think in real life, those people in the modern day would be carrying something more like this, and not a Beretta or a Mark 23 or a SIG. Maybe a SIG. Alright, so let's get into the Army Armament. I think it's, I can't remember the actual code designation that they put on this. It's obviously got like a model number that Army Armament give it. I think it's the R613 or something like that, and that's the Staccato XL with the optic cut. And so for YouTube purposes, this is safe and unloaded. It's an airsoft toy. It can't be modified to fire real ammunition. I'm the only person in this room, and it can't hurt anyone. It can't do any serious damage to anyone, and it's unloaded anyway. So Army Armament have got a bit of a mixed reputation. Their pistols are supposedly really, really good, and they did get a bit of a bad rep last year when a bunch of their Glocks just had a mass-produced quality control issue where like pretty much every single one that was made had an air seal problem or something along those lines. So the shop I was working at last year, we had a bunch of them, and they were all recalled back to the factory, and we were replacing customers' 40 Army Armament Glocks with an equivalently priced one from another brand. Pretty sure they were actually the same, just rebranded. I won't get into that too much, but yeah, so they had a bit of a bad rep with their Glock. I know they make a copy of the WEG36, which I'm quite interested to check out, because supposedly the WEG36 is one of the best gas blowback rifles ever made in terms of its gas efficiency and performance versus the price. So that's pretty interesting. And then their high cappers are basically complete clones of Tokyo Marui, but obviously with all metal externals and slides and barrels and whatnot. Apparently, you know, some pre-upgraded parts. Kind of dubious as to how well these perform versus a Marui. In my experience, they perform very well. I wouldn't say that they're outstanding out of the box, but they're certainly worth the money. They don't come in the UK with all the Staccato trademarks on them, unfortunately. If you want that, you have to do as I did and order from Asia. I'll probably make a little video tutorial on how to order airsoft stuff from Asia directly, just because it isn't that difficult. Yes, you have to wait a little bit longer. There are ways around some of the fees and taxes that you have to pay yourself if you're importing yourself. I think it's worth knowing, because a lot of UK retailers just don't want to take the risk on some product that people do want here, but because not many retailers want to take the risk on them, the retailers that do end up being able to sell them for a ridiculous amount of money. So it is worth knowing as a consumer that you can import things yourself from Asia, and when you do so, you can get the kind of cooler products that have all of the markings on that they just don't care about copyright in these countries, so they can get away with it. For me, it's much nicer to have a replica that's got all the realistic markings and stuff on it, because it makes it more of a collectible item, and to be honest, a bit more resellable if you ever feel like you're a bit bored of it and you want to move it on to someone that's going to use it a bit more. So the Army Armament Glocks, last year there were a batch that had a QC issue, and that's kind of given Army Armament a bit of a soiled name. But in my experience, even with their Glocks before that batch, and with their 1911s and high cappers, I've had no issues whatsoever. Just going to get a couple of the gripes out of the way that I've got with it first, because I think that's the more important point of this video for anyone interested in buying into the platform and getting your hands on one. Firstly, it's just a small issue, but literally as soon as I put it in a holster and took it out of a holster at a game for the first time, I lost my fibre optic sight. It's not a massive deal, I have plenty of spare bits of the stuff. It just means that acquiring the front sight, if I'm not using the optic, is quite annoying, especially in the dark indoors. This was all put together as like an indoor CQB primary, and with that role in mind, so yeah, being able to acquire your front sight quickly is pretty important. Secondly, the optic plate is kind of weird. I'm pretty sure it's RMR footprint cut. A lot of people confuse an RMR footprint with what this little type of optic is called. They just call all of these micro red dot sights RMRs, and that's just a little misconception. They're not. They're called a micro red dot sight or a reflex sight. The RMR part is basically the measurement between the two screws, how far apart they are, and that is the footprint that it has. So when you're looking at pistols, you look at what footprint the optic plate has. A lot of pistols have, you know, a swappable thing that you can put a plate on this plate that has screw holes in the right place for your optic, but then you're just increasing the height a lot. I quite like that with this, if I can get the angle right, that red dot is like bang on the top of my, it's a bit dirty at the moment, my apologies. The red dot is bang at the top when you look through of my front sight post. So it's very easy, just makes it easier to acquire your front sight. So yeah, the holes aren't really in a specific place. They are RMR cut, but like, I don't know if maybe it was just mine, the screws were very small. So any optic I had, if I didn't want a considerable amount of wobble on there, so with the SOTAC and Holy Warrior RMR clones, RMR and SROs with Trijicon markings from SOTAC and Holy Warrior. So if you want one of those, you have to basically, with the screws that it comes with the screws that the optics comes with, you're going to sort of re-thread the screw holes, because the screws are quite a lot bigger than what's in the plate. So that is kind of annoying. To get this Vector Frenzy on, I'm not sure, I can't remember what the footprint was of this, but it wasn't RMR. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, there are two sets of holes. There are RMR holes, and there's a slightly narrower one in here, like further back. So the RMR holes are actually further forward. These ones are a bit further back, and they're not as far apart as an RMR. How many times can I say RMR in one video? Yeah, they were very finicky because the holes weren't quite the right space apart, so I have ended up re-threading one of the holes to get it to fit, and it is quite annoying. I've also had to put a little bit of electrical tape underneath to sort of keep it from moving a whole bunch. I think Army Armament parts are quite easy to come about, so I may look into you can remove the plate entirely. Just removing the plate and replacing it with one and something a bit more proper, more better, more long term. But for now, for what it is, I really like the Vector Frenzy. It's got a shake awake and an auto brightness, so if I cover up the top, you can't really see on the video because it's just too much, but it adjusts automatically for the brightness. So it's very sleek. There's no buttons or anything on it. There's just a teeny little Allen key hole here where you adjust the left and right, the windage, and one on the top here for the elevation to pop your dot where you need it. Gripe 1 was the front sight fibre optic coming out, and gripe 2 was the optics plate is a little bit off spec. You need to do a little bit of work with whatever optic you've got to get it on there nice and securely. Gripe 3 is the mags, funnily enough. So they are all gas tight. They all hold like a good amount of gas. They're not particularly leaky. They're quite robust. I've dropped them on the floor, and that they're in quite obvious sections. So if anything does start leaking, it's usually just as simple as tightening a screw, really, and making it all airtight again. But the issue I've got with them is that different Army Armament mags, like styled mags, are better and worse than each other. There's no like proper standard. So for example, I think it was this one in the shooting video. It's a 30 round mag, so it's one of the reasons why I want to use it as a primary. Like, I'm used to using 30 round mags in my rifle, so a few of these is pretty good to go, and I think I've got 8 of them, so it's about the same as my rifle loadout. So it is doable, the 30 round mags. However, this particular mag got through about 23, I believe, before it gassed out. I did fill up the mags with gas, and I think maybe I just overgassed this one. I thought I did them for about the same amount of time, but hey, is what it is. About 10 seconds, probably a bit too much. But these mags, they don't really give you a good indication of when they're full and when they're filling. It's just kind of like a pissy, gassy sound that it makes. It doesn't all sort of overspill out the top when it's full, like Marui mags are designed to. So this magazine did over 2.5 mags. I think it was probably about 50 rounds. So yeah, so it did 30, and then there was about 10 left. So it did about 50 before it gassed out. which is obviously a lot better. And I have different results with different Army Armament mags, and I know they're all Army Armament mags, so that's a bit annoying. I think if you want consistency with your gas efficiency, just get Marui mags, really. The Army Armament mags are very cheap. Got 4 of these Taran Tactical ones for I think £17 a piece, which is really good for any kind of gas airsoft mags. They've got a nice little Taran Tactical logo on the bottom, which is nice. But yeah, I think if you're in it for reliability, some Tokyo Marui mags, or there's a company that makes like super duper lightweight ones that they're like real weight of an unloaded magazine, like CNC aluminium. I'll remember what they're called and I'll post a little picture of them with the name. Incredibly well made. You get 50 rounders, I believe. They're super lightweight and you can get them with all the markings and stuff, and you can get the realistic fronts, so because they're extended and they poke out the bottom, you can get them so that it's a closed front, just to look more realistic. So yeah, I would recommend, if you're buying into the Army Armament high capa platform as like an out the box upgraded high capa, you go with some better magazines, some Pro Win, that's it. Either the Pro Win ones, Tokyo Marui ones, or if you've got good experience with like WE ones, go with those. I wouldn't really use CO2 with these. I don't feel like it's really particularly designed to be used with CO2 internally, so I'm not going to do that. That's about it for the gripes I've got with it. It was kind of hard to like angle this at the target and be within camera shot all at once. So forgive some of the bad shooting in the test, but I do find it to be incredibly accurate for the distances that I need it to be at. Talking indoors CQB kind of distances, 20 to 30 feet absolute max, really. Yeah, it does it perfectly well. I was able to hit those like tiny little swinging targets with ease. I don't really feel the need to upgrade the hop up. It is, apart from being annoying to get to, but that's just what you have with a high capa, where you have to take the slide off to access it. The hop up seems to be very good, very responsive. I've got it about halfway up at the moment and I was shooting 0.25s. With it all the way up, it can hop a 3-2 dead straight, no problem. So I don't really feel the need to upgrade the hop up unit or rubber until something breaks. I don't expect it to last very long. Working in the shop, I had seen a couple of them break here, so yeah, I will expect to have to upgrade it at some point just because of the build material, but it does a good job as it is already. There's no accuracy wise with the hop and the inner barrel, I've got no qualms really. It hits whatever I shoot with it, so that's kind of more than you can ask for really. An upgraded inner barrel is probably the next go-to thing if I feel like upgrading anything on it, but as I say, I've got no problems with it out the box in terms of its performance. It makes a very nice sound. Yeah, it's really nice. When I was working in that shop, we had one of these in, but it didn't have all the markings on it. I wasn't really a fan of high capas. I thought they were sort of a weird fictional competition airsoft only thing. But the more I just sort of sat and held this one, the more I sort of kind of got it. Didn't have any of the Staccato trades on it because it was a UK shop and we just didn't get them in like that. It was just so it didn't have the star, it didn't have the writing. But it's just finished really nicely. It's like Army Armament, like CNC work is incredible. The tolerances are perfect. Like there's no wobble in that slide, and you can see that it's all just perfectly well fitted together. Everything just fits together in a slide, locks up nice and crisp. The blowback is very crisp, even with the red dot on. It doesn't seem to lag it much, and yeah, it's great. Now with the other one, I kind of have like, you've got to check out my other video on these. I do go into detail with it a bit more. I've just put this together out of Army Armament parts, so this isn't even like a factory gun, and it all still fits together really nicely. There's a bit of a resistance sometimes in the slide, on return. But I kind of use this, it's a bit more simple. I use it outdoor where I'm not going to lose anything if it falls off, like you know, fibre optic sight, a red dot. Like, it's just a bit more straightforward and simple. Daylight, don't need a torch, you know. And it was an Army Armament Springfield 1911 marked slide on a Staccato 2011 marked frame, which is obviously a load of crap. Like, that's not a thing that will exist, especially as it's marked Cal 45, and as far as I'm aware, Staccatos are all 9mm. So that might be wrong, feel free to correct me. I've outranged AEGs with this, and it's just parts that I ordered from Asia and put together quite cheap. I think the slide was 35 quid, the frame was 50, including postage, and I already had all the mags and stuff, obviously. Yeah, fits in more holsters more easily, basically. But it's incredibly snappy, and is shooting around 350 FPS on a 0.2. So I can't actually use it indoors at some of the places that have a lower FPS limit. So it's an my outdoors version, basically. And yeah, I was very impressed with the range on it. Able to hit people sort of an AEG distance away with it quite easily, which is very nice. I'll give this a little shoot as well. They are very snappy and they sound very nice and crisp and sort of pingy when they fire. Highly recommend them. Obviously, if you are going to get it, I'd recommend getting one from Asia so you can have the trademarks. And Army Armament do like a wide variety of these. You've got STI ones, Staccato ones, DCI ones, and they're all modelled off of real, you know, 2011 modern 9mm 1911 real firearms. So you can kind of pick your flavour and go with it. So yeah, whichever company you like the design of most, you can go with, and if you're ordering from Asia, you can get it with all the appropriate markings and replica bits and bobs on. There's some nice ones all over it. One thing I will say about this particular one, if you can see, the grips are slightly different. This has got the little Staccato logo bits on for grip, whereas this is a bit more sweat resistant with the hand stippling on there. But this feels incredibly nice in the hand. It's kind of like it's a bit glocky and square in the grip. It's incredibly comfortable and it feels really nice. The mag release is very easy to get to there. The slide release could be extended, but it's not the end of the world. To reload once it's empty. The mags are drop free, so you do kind of need to be careful of dropping them on the floor, but as long as you're ready for it, then put the new mag in and come up with my supporting thumb and do it that way. So it's not the biggest deal in the world, and it does stop me from resting my thumb on it. So when it's out of ammo, it locks back reliably. I've used it quite a lot. Not every time. I have a lot of pistols, and it's like, for that reason, the more you have, the less wear and tear you'll find on them, because you know you rotate them quite a lot. So they get a fair amount of use, but the finish is held up really well, which is more than I can say for a lot of other airsoft brands. The finish holds up, coming in and out of a holster and in and out of a pouch, and in that regard, it's like it's good. It's well finished, and it's finished to a very high standard, and I'm quite pleased with it. The only part that hasn't so well is the outer barrel. It has this sort of pinky scratch down it, and that is whatever the finish under this sort of titanium-y dark chrome finish is. So that's kind of annoying. I thought it was the screw for the front sight post, but that's actually quite embedded inside. So it's like there's no way the screw's touching it, which is quite frustrating. So I think it's actually just the hole that the screw's in. It's got like a bit of a sharp edge, and that's doing that. But again, it's not the end of the world. You don't really see that very often. Like, it's usually covered up, and I don't really look at it. Out of sight, out of mind. Something that was just maybe a bit overlooked, maybe just with mine. I haven't had that problem on the other one, so yeah. So as I said, this particular one was kind of put together with the idea in mind that it would be an indoor CQB primary. Something I can just have in my bag and go play an evening game with after work. It's still been kept as a secondary. I could say that there have been a couple of games where I've gone in with it as my primary, but I've not gone to play Airsoft with only this in my bag ever. I would like to, but I've just got other stuff that I want to play with as well, really. That's the only real reason. It is perfectly capable with the 30 round mags. I just kind of feel at home. Yeah, they're not as gas efficient as my rifle and my MP5 mags, but it's perfectly doable. I wouldn't feel like I'm at a handicap if I just turned up with this to an indoor game. I am a little worried about my optic getting shot out, I must admit. I wasn't when I first put it on here, but since I actually had an optic shot out by some dweeb with a HPA bullet hose running around with a riot shield like an absolute bellend, I'm pretty sure it was because he had his FPS ramped up too high, either deliberately or accidentally, which I know is quite kind of easy to do that accidentally, but regardless, it was very annoying. It was like an 80 quid SIG Romeo 8T replica, and that was, yeah, turned into a paperweight because some dweeby kid wanted to play Ghostbusters instead of Airsoft. Bit worried about the optic getting shot out. There are different protective things you can get for these. Failing that, I might try and make something. The Surefire isn't real. It's kind of running out of battery at the moment as well. It's I can't remember who makes it. I think it's the Watson make this one. You can find them on eBay usually with the markings on. I know people like to HPA their high cappers and have an adapter so that you can run a hose out of it and then an M4 mag, and that literally makes me want to shoot my own eyes out. This is a very good looking, very nice, sexy platform, and I don't think it should be ruined with a bunch of paintball-esque Ghostbusters bullshit. This is a great replica of a Staccato. I know there's a couple of options out there. Personally, I think this is the best one. I know EMG make another one, although they probably don't make it. They probably just rebrand it and license it to have all the Staccato markings on it. It was kind of, for me, it was kind of a toss-up between that one and this, and I watched a bunch of videos on it, and every single video of the EMG one, the slide was rattly as balls. Like, it was awful. And I knew I already had an Army Armament 1911. Again, this was built, the slide and the frame were completely separate parts, so this wasn't a factory built, put together gun, and there's nothing in there. It's very well machined. No gaps or anything. It's just, I knew it was well built. I knew that the Army Armament ones were well built. The other option would have been a Nova kit. Although they're called kits, the Nova kits are a complete pistol that you put together yourself. They don't include a mag, but they run on Marui system mags. So, however, they are something that you have to put together yourself. The tolerances are very, very highly made. You have to like wear them all in yourself. A friend of mine got one, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was him. It's probably him putting it together badly, but it just doesn't work correctly. It fires in full auto, and the grip safety just doesn't work properly. I don't know if there was issues that the Nova kits had. They are very, very nicely finished. They're very nicely built. It's all like CNC aluminium, or I believe some of it's CNC steel as well. But again, they're like 1,400 quid, which is a lot of money. I think this was 120 plus shipping from Hong Kong. I got mine on JK Army. The price also meant that it didn't quite tickle the threshold for customs, so I paid no customs charge. It came straight from JK Army to my door, and that's cheaper than what the shop I was working at was selling these for without the markings, so it was a bit of a no-brainer. Yeah, I had to wait, I think 6 weeks for it to turn up. I don't know why. I think because of how the laws are in China with regards to transporting firearms, because these are classed as firearms in China, they have to wait until they've got enough stuff to ship all in one go, because they can't move things around the country, so things have to go from the factory to the plane and or the boat. And so maybe my order was placed early on a container being filled, so I had to wait for the container to be filled before they could post it. I bought other stuff from there before and it's come in 2 weeks, so you know, I'm gonna sort of go with the logic there and assume that that's kind of what happened. But if you can wait a little bit, spend less money, get it with the full trademarks, and have a very nice Staccato replica. That's all I got on this for now from me, really. If I have any more updates, I'll be sure to post them. At the moment, I'm very happy with it, and I can't recommend it enough. This was a nice little break from my recent jacking off of VFC guns, so I do have plenty more VFC content to come that I'm in the process of editing at the moment. I just fancied doing something that was a little break from that. If you like this content, please like and subscribe, give it a share, a thumbs up. Drop me a comment, let me know what you think about the Army Armament stuff. If you've got experience with other stuff that you think is better, let me know. Any tips on how to keep them going for longer, as long as possible, let me know. If you've got an experience with any mags that you found to be more better, let me know. I want to hear about it. If you've made it to the end of this video, thank you very much. You are the best. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.